Hi, welcome. Thank you for signing up. I'm Chava. I am a practitioner of Chinese medicine and a life coach. And what I am working on doing is combining these two different, different professions and really using the tools of traditional Chinese psychology and traditional Chinese personality analysis to help people get where they want to in life and to do what they want to do and to suffer less while they're doing it. And I'm recording these videos because I think that it was very, very, very helpful for me when I was in school studying Chinese medicine, studying Chinese psychology, to learn what my motivating emotion was, especially as someone who had like 2.5, 3.5 more years of tests to get through. And to understand really why what I needed to do to psych myself up to sit down and really study was completely different than what my study partner needed to do. And that we were both okay, and neither of us was weird, neither of us was wrong, and we just had very different drives. We had very different really emotions that we could use as the gas in the engine of the motivation. Because what an emotion really is, when you think about it or when you study it, is an emotion is it's a state in the body that's expressing the need to do something. Right? So if you're happy, you need to reach out to people and become closer to them. And if you're sad, same thing, but you also have more emotions maybe that you have to express and let work through your body. When you're scared, you have to either get away from what's scaring you or maybe get closer to it and get ready to investigate and find out if it's really that scary. Emotions are what drives us to do things in life. And so each different type of personality, each different balance of energies that a person has will be more attuned to a specific emotion and will be more open to being driven to do something by that emotion. So I'm just going to explain a little bit about how emotions work in Chinese medicine, because it's not exactly one-to-one with how we think of them if we grew up in the West speaking English. So I'm going to run through the 5 main emotions, and then we're going to narrow in on what's relevant to you. So the emotions are thought of less as an emotion. Like we would say in English, you know, someone is grieving or someone is happy. The emotions are a spectrum with a variety of expressions of the same basic feeling, of the same basic energy. And so I'm going to start with anger, just because that's the first one in the list when I learned them. And so the emotion of anger is usually seen, I think, in modern English speaking societies as a negative thing, as a negative emotion. It's not something we want to experience. It's not something we want people around us to express. And this has not been true throughout history. So I had a friend who was an anthropologist, and at some point she decided to clear out her bookshelf. And I have very, very recently developed the ability to not read books just because they're in front of me. So I ended up reading like 13 anthropology books, and a number of them were about anger and its expression in different societies. I'm weird, what can I tell you? And so one of the things I learned there is that different societies view anger sometimes as a positive thing, or as a number of emotions where we maybe see it as only one. So among the ancient Greeks, a righteous anger, an anger that had a cause that you needed to go out and do something about, the need to avenge someone or the need to defend your honor, was seen as a positive thing. It was seen as like, it's a blessing if you get the chance to experience this emotion that turns you into this overwhelming drive to act in a way that was seen as positive in that society. It was a gift from the gods to be given a mission and a direction and the drive to achieve something that, something good by their standards. And so when we talk about anger in Chinese medicine, I'm not talking about like people on the street in Beijing and like Chinese culture as a whole. But in traditional Chinese medicine, when we talk about anger, we're talking about an entire spectrum of emotions, which all have to do with the need to change something. So if you saw the movie Inside Out, they have a brilliant description of different emotions there and of what they do and what they're supposed to do and how they're supposed to work. And their anger is the emotion whose job is to protect us from other people being unfair to us, from people demanding that we do more than our share, from people trying to take advantage of us. And it's kind of similar as to the Chinese medicine perspective, where anger is the emotion that demands something be changed. Anger is what we feel when something needs to change. And this is an entire spectrum of emotion, because how we express that need to change something depends on our ability to affect the situation that needs changing. It depends on our willingness to do so. It depends on whether we see it as something that we should do something about. And so this spectrum of anger, it goes from, on the one end, this impotent rage. So if you think of someone who's just angry all the time and blows up over little things or shouts at people on the phone for no reason, like they're angry about something and they don't feel able or capable to do anything about it, or maybe they don't even know what it is, but that anger is telling them there's something that's not right, there's something that you need to change. But since they don't know what or how to deal with the situation that's making them angry, it is kind of bursting out of them all over the place. On the other end of the spectrum, we have the same inability to deal with the situation, but all of that explosive anger, instead of being directed towards the environment and the people around us, is directed inwards. And that's called frustration, maybe, or, we talk about someone, I have blanked on all normal English expressions for this, but there's got to be something like, eating away at yourself, eating your belly, these people who are repressing their anger because they know that it's not fair to take it out on innocent people, and they don't feel that they can address the real problem. Or again, maybe they're not even aware of what the problem is, because they're not seeing the situation and what's really upsetting them for whatever reason. So these people are keeping their anger inside, and all of that explosion is happening inside of them, often happening and it starts to affect them physically. It starts to affect the digestive system or blood pressure. And so we have these two ends of the spectrum. Neither of them is good. You don't want to be at one of these extreme ends. What you want to be is in the middle where you have this feeling, we can call it anger, but where you have this emotional drive to change something, and you can change something, and you know what needs to be changed. And so all of that energy, instead of exploding out of you, or instead of being pressed down inside, is pointed in a direction, in a specific direction, at a target, at achieving a goal. And so, the energy, the emotion that makes people go out there and sign petitions or start movements or report things to the police, or I really need to learn how to edit these videos, because there's a cat and I got distracted. Okay. But for the moment, okay, the feeling that something needs to change is what we're talking about. We're talking about this emotion that is usually translated as anger. And it's the same with all of the other emotions that we're going to be talking about. There's a spectrum. Different parts of the spectrum might have different names in English, or some of them might not have names or cultural equivalents that we see as emotions. So for the spectrum of the fire emotion, which is usually something like happiness. What we have on the one hand, on the one end of the spectrum, on the one extreme, is an inability to experience happiness, just being cut off from that. Anhedonia, it's called. It's what you get when people are depressed, like clinically depressed. Just the inability to connect to that happy energy at all. At the other extreme end of the spectrum, we get mania. We get people who are so overwhelmed with this amazingly good feeling that they don't have the space to care about other people and to care about how their actions are affecting the people around them, or to care about the future, or even necessarily to care about themselves. And the happy medium there, the happiness, what happiness is when you feel good enough about yourself and about the world around you and about other people. You have this kind of happy, joyful feeling that drives you to want to connect more, to want to connect to other people or to nature, or to be more invested in your work, to be more invested in your goals. And so happiness that is all about connection when it's healthy. When you end up on either of the extremes of being way too happy or not happy enough, or being depressed, then it cuts you off from the world around you. The next emotion on the list, the earth emotion, is usually translated into English as worrying or as overthinking. And what it actually is it's the drive to nurture. And if it's healthy, it's the drive to nurture and take care of people or of things, or, to do a good job in your work, to take care of your garden, to look out for a family, to make sure that your home is well maintained. It's the drive to nurture is basically what it is. I can't think of too many synonyms. Where at the one extreme, it can become neglect. You don't have the ability to connect to that emotion within you. And so you really don't care about taking care of others or of yourself. At the other extreme, it can become obsessive worrying or overthinking, or trying to anticipate everything that might possibly go wrong. It's being way too invested in just, I have to take care of everything, and not being able to let go and accept that, the world might be okay without you. Other people can take care of themselves. Your job might get by if you take a vacation. So that's that emotional spectrum, which again, doesn't really translate well into English, but it's a very important one. The fourth emotional spectrum is again usually translated as grief. And what it is really is it's the ability to value things and to value people, or to appreciate or to feel gratitude for things, people, the world, your life, whatever. The emotion is the emotion of gratitude and of appreciation. And it's not normally seen as an emotion in English or among English speakers, I think. And so it's given the name of its other aspect, which is grief. But grief and gratitude, from the Chinese medicine perspective, are the same thing. It's just that gratitude is this emotion when it's expressed towards, or when you're feeling it about something that you have. And grief is the same emotion, but when you're valuing and you're appreciating something that you don't have. And again, in this case, it's not that grief isn't like one end of the spectrum that's unhealthy to be in, like I talked about with the other emotions. Both gratitude and grief are healthy, normal expressions. If they get too far towards either end, where you get someone who's pathologically stuck in grief, or where you get someone who's obsessive and miserly and or stingy or controlling because they can't bear to let anyone or anything out of their possession, out of their sight, those are the two unhealthy extremes. And then the final emotion, this is kind of, I don't know, I felt like it was a sucky one to get stuck with because it's my main emotional driver, represented by the water element, or the emotion that's associated with the water energy, is fear. And fear is also a spectrum. fear can represent a large number of things. We can have a paralyzing fear. We can have a motivating fear. I remember I did a course on emotional first aid, which is not alternative medicine at all. This is very, very real. This is what you're supposed to do with people who've experienced trauma, like a car accident or a terrorist attack, God forbid, or something that has the risk of sending them into shock and later on developing PTSD. And one of the things we were taught is to break down the people at the scene of the accident or whatever it was, as according to whether they were paralyzed with fear or racing around and manic with fear. Like, these are the two extremes, and both of them can be problematic responses in some way. And we were actually taught that people who are paralyzed with fear are at a much greater risk of developing PTSD down the road. And so they need to be treated. They need to be treated with this emotional first aid to get them out of that paralyzing fear first, unless the people who are running around screaming and throwing things are endangering themselves or others, and then you go to them first. And so that was a little bit of a sidetrack, but just to explain that when we say fear, it can mean so many different things. And the healthy middle of this spectrum, the emotion that we're supposed to feel when we want to use it to drive us to get things done, or really that just the non-pathological, the healthy fear is the fear that protects us and drives us to accomplish things. And so it's this fear of never living my true life, never expressing who I really am, of missing out on doing all of the wonderful things I could be doing. That is the motivating fear, the fear that drives us to explore new places so we can find out if there's any danger before it attacks us. This curious fear is the one that we use to motivate ourselves, and it's the one that is, is probably driven a lot of human evolution. Actually, the fact that when we get scared, we don't just run away and we don't just freeze, but we actually have this ability to let fear motivate us towards going out into the unknown and exploring what's there, because it's easier to face your fear face on than to wait and let it take you by surprise. Okay, that got a little deep. And that was much longer than I was planning on going into. So I think I'm going to call this the introduction to this entire concept of motivating emotions. And I'm going to do another really short, I promise, little video describing what your emotion is that you can use to motivate yourself. So thank you very much for watching this. If you do watch this all the way to the end, have a great day. And I promise the next video is going to be much shorter. So I will see you in a minute.